Hello, this is Jeremy Webster with Collector's Maze, and I am here today with actress extraordinaire, Nicki Rapp. Nicki, how are you doing today?
I'm really well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. We made it.
Good.
We'll take Tuesday as a win. It's closer to Friday than Monday is.
It is. It's true. And tomorrow is like halfway, so it's like halfway Eve.
This is true. Very, very true. So, this joyous voice that is greeting us today, for those of us out there who may not know the name directly offhand, is the name of Lily from the Walking Dead games. Ooh,
Yeah.
that's
Don't hate me.
intense. So that has to be kind of an interesting thing. When you go through your career, you have this wonderful thing where you have these very joyous characters, and then you have this heavy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What brought you to voice acting?
Wow. It's kind of crazy because my voice was always the thing that I thought was the worst thing as far as my acting was going to be, because I grew up doing theater. I did a lot of musicals. I never felt limited in theater. And then when I went to drama school, same deal. I was played all kinds of roles. They want you to try all different ages, all different kinds of things. And I never was limited. But then at the end of the school, like I'm about to graduate, and they were like, your voice is probably the thing that's gonna hold you back from working a lot. And this was okay, so it was in when Animaniacs was on TV. I'm aging myself, but whatever. So
Right.
Animaniacs was on, and I used to get home from school, make sure I get my homework done so I could watch Animaniacs. So I loved it, but I never voice acting wasn't anything I ever considered doing, just because everyone made fun of me, and it's not fun getting made fun of like all the time. And it was not anything. It was just how I was.
Uh-huh.
And so anyway, I was watching Animaniacs after school all the time and listening to Dot, and like thinking, wait, maybe this is something from like Tress McNeil. She has that voice. She does all kinds of stuff. But Dot in particular was the character that made me think maybe this was something that I could do. Even though my teachers were like, you're not gonna work. But my dad, who was up in the Bay Area and near San Francisco, heard this woman, Samantha Paris. She has a voiceover school out there.
Uh-huh.
And he said, she has a voice like you. And after I graduated, because I did graduate despite my voice, I moved back home and I started taking classes. And I'll tell you, I loved theater. Theater was something my mom put me into because I was really, really shy. And I still am shy a lot of times. It's like sometimes I'm very like want to hide and stuff, but my mom put me in there, and it was one of those moments where, first of all, I liked it because it was an escape. I was like me getting to go out of myself. And also, I don't know, it just felt like it was one of the first things in my life that I was like, and I always feel like I don't mean to sound like, oh, I'm great. It was one of those things that I did, and I'm like, wow, I think I'm good at this. Like, because it felt really good. It felt good. That was the main thing. And then I wanted to do it more and more. And so stepping in a voiceover booth, see my tangents, wanting my bleed back. Going into the voiceover booth, it was a very thing because my introvertedness was really felt extroverted, and I felt very free without anyone watching me, without thinking about where I have to go in the next scene, like what steps I have to take. Do I have to walk to that chair? Do I walk to that chair when I say this line? Like all those sorts of things. And also not having to memorize was a different freedom too. But I love it. It's like it's introverts, it's acting for introverts, I feel like. And for me, it led me into something that I realized I just really loved and felt really good about.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I worked at a convention in the last couple of years. I was on staff for a local Doctor Who convention, and they had a number of actors who do the Big Finish productions with them. And we had Peter Davison as a guest, and he was the for those who don't know him by name, he was the blonde straight haired in the tan outfit from the 80s, and he does a lot of the Big Finish productions. And they sort of asked him, what the role was like in terms of doing like the Big Finish productions, and he was like, oh, it's everything I would have wanted from the show in the first place. They put me in a room by myself, I get to have the script and I can read it, and just on the whim I can give the delivery I want, and no one's there to go, okay, can you.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
really, it's wonderful. It feels really freeing. And I just remember the first class I took, how exhilarated I felt after. It was like a new level of acting that I didn't know if it was going to be harder because I didn't have anyone with me, but I imagined it. It's like my imagination became even freer because I wasn't judging myself in some ways. Yeah.
Now that you say that, and that's particularly the concept of physical presence. I mean, you're talking about vocal presence, but there's a lot that goes into going into stage acting. You have to have a certain, I don't necessarily want to say ego, though. You've got your Marlon Brandos of the world, but there's a certain amount of physical authority, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term,
Yeah.
particularly if you want like to be the lead in something. And not everybody is a Peter O'Toole who can just walk out there with a swagger and own anything they want, just
Yeah.
carry on their attitude. Yeah. So that's actually a really interesting way to think about it.
I mean, I love it, and I would love to do theater again. It's been a while since I've done any plays or musicals, but it was like a different compartment that I think was just more my favorite. There's
Yeah.
nothing like being on stage and getting the reactions of the audience. But that is the prolonged thing now. Like when I do a game, I have to wait for that, and then I have to go read comments. Maybe I shouldn't read. But it's cool to see. It's a different thing. It's just you have to be more like, it's gonna happen a little bit later. You're gonna find out what people think later than immediately. But I don't know. There's also that really great anticipation in both of them. I don't know. It's just a different style, I guess, different place.
And considering the places you go as an actress, obviously you're probably not a method actress, of course.
Not with Walking Dead.
Oh wow, yeah. I'm sure your neighbors would have loved that.
Oh my God. Yeah, they heard some of me. Like I think I think it was at when I was doing my audition in my closet, because she was real intense, so there was a lot of cussing, a lot of anger that normally doesn't come from me. So
like is it easier to slip into that sort of other that the other character is that you're playing when no one's actually seeing you, in a way?
it is, I think, because I don't know. I think I know I have this like tunnel vision kind of thing when I'm doing it, because people will ask me like, how did you do this certain scene? Like, and I'm like, I have no life experience. Okay. So for example, the meat locker scene in the Walking Dead game. So, there's a lot going on in that scene that there's no way I have any life experience. The only life experience I have in my life, which was what got me through it, was that I lost my dad in 2005. So it's been a while, but I know the feeling of that. And of course, Lily's situation was incredibly intense and violent and horrible. But the emotion that I felt inside was something that after I recorded that session, I think I collapsed the rest of the day. And even when I was doing the session, the engineer told me that they were worried about me because I was so in it. That whole when the salt lick on his head and that whole thing. So even though it's so hard to, I don't know, it's really hard to explain. I was so in it that I was all it was just the only thing I had was like she's gonna lose her father.
Yeah.
She's trying to fight to save him, despite the fact that he is this kind of person. He's still her father.
Yeah. The Walking Dead in general is almost like an extended sort of examination of the concept of trauma. And it's not just the individual characters, it's also a society and global trauma. So that it would connect so naturally. And I think that's part of its appeal for so long.
Yeah.
Is that, and it's actually kind of amazing right now, given everything in the last year or two, that a new angle hasn't been found. You know what I mean? But it's a show that's lived its life and it's had its spinoffs and everything else. But I mean, it is what it is. So
Yeah.
So flipping from that,
Yes.
from the grimdark,
Yes.
Psychonauts.
Yay, Psychonauts!
Psychonauts. Now this was a game series. I had one of the early ones like a long time ago. But there is jovial the word. They have a very jovial sort of cartoonishness to them.
Yeah.
And you can go from you can go from like the heavy, to that sort of yay cartoonish, joy, and it's a lot of fun, of course.
I love it so much.
So it's nice to see it making a comeback.
She's my original Lily. Like,
yeah, I found it interesting that you have two Lilies that live at the North Pole and the South Pole.
That's a great way to put it. That's absolutely true. And then actually, did you happen to play Firewatch or know the game Firewatch?
I didn't get that one.
Oh yeah, so the guys that created that game, they wrote season 1 of The Walking Dead, and they're also huge Psychonauts fans. So I had a pretty funny little role in that, but they named her Lily just because we got to keep it all Lilies.
Of course, got to keep it all Lilies.
Yeah.
Okay, that's hilarious to think of. Yeah. So it carries over, even though it's an opposing thing. It's like, but look, we could do this awesome thing. I think that there was an era there that was in the mid 90s, leading up, where you had these certain like video game studios or certain video game makers were launching in these sort of innovative directions. LucasArts particularly, and you were in several of the Sammun-Mak games as well.
And Tales of Monkey Island.
And the Monkey Island games, yes, those were all games like I played some of the early ones because that was my generation before I had to be an adult and get a job. But there was before it was all EA Sports and Run and Gun, there were a lot of these adventure games that sort of were breaking off into their own, and they had something of a mix of a cartoonish universe, a whimsy to them without being Sierra crawls. The Sierra games where it was like you had a character and you entered it, something for them to do, but you never knew what to tell them to do, and eventually got mad and threw the disc in the street. I was watching the and Roberta Williams. Please, Roberta Williams, if you ever see this, I don't dislike you, but I had a couple of the early Sierra games because my dad bought a 386.
That's awesome.
Guy, and they were on them, and I'm like 8 or 10 or something, trying to figure out how to do something on it and just getting annoyed at it. Well, why aren't computer games as fun as Nintendo? but LucasArts was one of the companies that came along and said, computer games can actually be entertaining and fun. Yeah. And it's got to be really interesting to have been part of that tradition that comes out of the LucasArts, studio.
It's awesome.
And that was, that was a lot of words from me. For those of them out there who aren't familiar with this side of video game history, but how did you get involved in those games?
I mean, I was real fortunate because I got started. I mean, it's crazy. When I first got started, I was doing like children's educational stuff, and I still do a lot of that. But when I first began, I was doing CD-ROM things. So it was a while ago, and I did this web cartoon through Mondo Media. I wish they were. I mean, I think they're still around, but they used to do flash cartoons, flash animation.
Oh, like
And
the old new, was it Newgrounds, and they had the snake, badger snake.
oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they like Happy Tree Friends got their start with Mondo Media. Yeah.
Okay.
Mondo mini shows. So I got cast in this Mondo mini show called Piki and Poco Adventures in Starland. They're all on YouTube right now. It's fantastic. So it was just ahead of its time. It's so good to look up. But like I did that, and then the casting director for that, she called me in for Psychonauts. So that was that connection. And then we get Tim Schafer, who I didn't know his legacy at all, you know. I didn't know how amazing. I knew he was an amazing person. He was at all my recording sessions. I mean, I've known him probably since 2000 now.
Yeah.
And he's so wonderful. He's a wonderful, amazing person. I've been in I did the Nordic Game Jam, or the Nordic Games. Yeah, it was the Nordic Games. And he was there doing a keynote. I was there with a Walking Dead panel thing. And it was just so cool to be in Sweden with him and to see people just losing their minds, like, you know, and to the point where he pulled me, he's like, here's Lily, like, you know, he just had so many people. He's just amazing. So I was really fortunate. I didn't know as much about him, but then when I got cast in Tales of Monkey Island through Telltale, then I was like, oh my gosh, Tim Schafer has his fingers in this too. Like, this was, it's amazing. Yeah, I got real fortunate.
If I remember correctly, his fingers were in a lot of the really great adventure games.
Yeah.
The late 90s, early 2000s. And he was one of those guys you always rooted for. You know, he might get a hit or something, or he might not get a hit, but he was always somebody who's going to put out something that was interesting.
Yeah.
Because particularly video games, they always complain about movies sort of falling into a trend and sticking there. But video games always tended to be worse, because it takes, when you looked at like the PC market for late 90s, early 2000s, the amount of money that went into the production of the games seemed exorbitant. I mean, and just sort of like Hollywood does, or where Hollywood, oh, we got $100 million movie, we need them all to make, 500 million to make return, and it starts to move towards that thing. When success starts being judged by the money id Software brings in with Doom 2 and Quake, then guys like Tim Schafer are the guys who have to, yes but be the yes but guys, and and that's a real thing. But is it kind of, do you see a lot of differences in the cultural fandoms? Like you mentioned going to Sweden, and the Japanese video game market, for example, is very different. They're a lot more, they're into more intense, harder games, and they tend to be in North America and such. Have you noticed sort of a cultural difference between the audiences that follow you?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I know that I did a few Walking Dead, the Walker Stalker conventions in England. And the English were a lot more polite with their hate for Lily to my face. So that was nice.
Really?
Yeah. So like, yeah, they were a lot more like, oh, I really hated your character, but you're lovely. Like, but Americans are like, you're a bitch, and walk away. Like, a lot of them, they wouldn't even talk to me sometimes, but then I would like try to engage because, but something I will say that's actually really cool is I did The Sims for 12 years, and going over to Europe, it was really fun to meet people that play The Sims, because it's the same understanding of everybody. That's why Simlish is all universal language. So that was a really beautiful thing to go into like a GameStop, whatever. I don't know what it would be over there, but and see like a whole Sims display, and maybe it's in, Swedish or whatever, but they're hearing me and they're understanding my emotions through the language. So I always thought The Sims was really a great, beautiful kind of world PC kind of a thing. Like everybody can understand it. So culturally for me, that was like the raddest experience.
The empathetic quotient of The Sims, I think, was, and I guess it's still a series, isn't it? Is always the thing I found really, really interesting with those games, because I could never understand people who would be mean to Sims. I never could understand that, because they have that sort of tone thing, like the way you understand a dog, in a way, the emotions of a dog, and if the dog is happy or sad, because dogs go to sleep. And it was the same sort of thing. Why would you? I think that there's a certain carryover of that kind of quality in something today like Animal Crossing. Except you can't be mean to an Animal Crossing person, but it has this soft sort of empathy to it. Everybody,
does.
Yeah, they're trying to make their little world a better place. And my wife plays Animal Crossing very regularly, and I swear it's like ASMR the video game, just to sit and watch and listen to it and read. If that makes any sense. And The Sims
it does, totally.
Yeah, and The Sims had a very similar quality to it. How did you come up with and I'm not saying you necessarily came up with it, but the broken speech pattern, the speech that isn't speech, you know what I mean? Is that just something like you come up with off the fly, or?
It was really cool, because it's amazing, like when I think about the very beginning of when I just started doing voiceover, because I think I booked Psychonauts first, and then I booked Sims like right after. And I didn't know how those two games were going to really shape a lot of my career, because they've both been long-term things. I mean, The Sims, I'm not in Sims 4, but Sims 2 and Sims 3, and I took over for the kid in the original Sims because his voice was changing too fast, which I felt bad. But anyway, I'm glad I got the job. But for the Simlish, in the original Sims, they had a different, like Jerry and Steven, they had a different kind of marbly sound, almost like drunk. Marbly, like marbles in your mouth, and like I don't know. So I never heard them. I didn't know anything about them. So I never heard them do Simlish. I came into it completely cold. I went to Max's, into this tiny little room, and they had a little TV set, and they were like, okay, so whatever the kid is doing in this, just act it out in gibberish. But the key is, it can't sound like any language in particular. It can't sound Russian. It can't sound Chinese. It can't sound it has to be like just sounds, which, if you think too much about it, you're going to like not be, well, for me personally, when I think too much, I screw myself up. So
that sounds almost like that almost sounds like a weird Rorschach experiment. You have to make sound, but it can't be a distinguishable.
It can't be any kind of language, like people are being like, oh, you're speaking this or you're speaking that. But I remember when I was in drama school, we used to do scene work where we would have to communicate to each other in gibberish. And so I just kind of took myself back there. And, so I think the animation was a kid taking a cake out of the oven. And so I would be like, Nurbalish Sheebalor, Gazobi, so stuff like that. And then I would be like, oh, I go Sheena Bolaror, like I burned myself or something, So it's like really fun to do that. And it was one of the weirdest auditions I've ever done, because I didn't know if I did it right. But how do you know? You just can't.
How do you know?
Yeah, so I did it, and I don't think I found out for a couple months, and so I didn't think I got the job, and I found out I got it, and I had no idea I'd be doing it for 12 years. I mean, I loved it. I loved it. And in the original, in Sims 2, I was the only child, And then in Sims 3, they brought in a recording partner for me, Georgie Kidder, and she was the little boy and I was the little girl. And in Sims 3 also, they got all pretty much new actors, I think, except for me. No, I think it was just me. And then, but they made scripts. So they would have like a script of 1 syllable words, 2 syllable words, 3 syllable words. So they made it a little easier for them. I just went off of my own head. I never had a script at all. So I didn't like cheating. That was the original question you asked me. I made it up. Yeah, I made it up. And then I'm a weirdo. Like, I know I'm kind of a weirdo. When I'm home here, like, I'll put on music and like a nerd, like a big nerd, I'm like singing in Simlish. Like, I'm not getting paid for it anymore. I'm just a nerd.
Fun, right?
Like, just singing in Simlish. It's fun to make up words. It's very expressive. So.
Well, that's cool. But
I'm like, oh, it's so, I just said that in a podcast. All right.
Because it's really interesting, you know, that when you said I just made it up as a win, and part of me remembers some of the old like Andy Kaufman bits, you know, where he would yeah, I mean, and it's genius, and people just don't know that it's not something you plan. I just turned up that way. Sometimes those are the best surprises you can have happen to you.
It was a great acting challenge for me, and you know, and plus I'm playing like an 8-year-old kid, so it's very like I got to have temper tantrums. It was actually really therapeutic. As an adult, you can't do that. So if I was going through something, sometimes it came out in my temper tantrums, you know? It was good therapy. Yeah. It was cool.
I would do that with records.
Yeah. It's fun because then you don't have to really know the words. You just make whatever words you want. People do that anyway. They just don't, you know.
Yeah, it's a dark day. Get the Black Sabbath out.
Yeah, perfect.
There you go. So what are you working on right now?
Well, I have a really cool game that's coming out, I think in October, called Moonglow Bay.
I saw a trailer for that.
Yeah.
That looked fun.
Yeah, and it's really like what you're saying. It's a lot of it's just emotions. It's just you know, I played a couple characters in it, and it's just very peaceful and beautiful, and also there's a story to it, and yeah, like it's just like a really heart-wrenching story. So yeah, that's coming out next month. What else? I don't know. I have like little things. I do a lot of kids stuff, you know, this thing like called Animal Islands.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Animal Islands. Yeah, you said you did some educational stuff.
Yeah, I used to do a lot for Leapfrog.
Who did you do in Leapfrog?
I was Tad for a while, up until about 5 years ago.
Yeah, okay. My kids
all kinds of stuff.
My kids watched. Okay, so that's the click I'm not getting in my head. That took care of it. Well, they did for a while these direct to DVD, I'm pretty sure DVD series, and they were sequential, and we were picking them up from my son because he was, I mean, they were a thing, you know, and the Leapfrog stuff, unlike a lot of other stuff, Caillou, wasn't annoying.
Well, I'm glad. Sometimes I worry about that because I'll be at conventions. I had a picture of Tad on my banner, and you know, is actually a lot of parents were thanking me for teaching their kids something, but I was like always so worried that it was too perky and annoying.
No, it wasn't perky and annoying. There's a balance, right? I mean, there's perky and annoying, but there's also Caillou where it's where he's kind of a walking temper fit.
Yeah.
And so it goes either way, but Tad was cool. My kids grew up with you.
Okay, good. That makes me happy. Tad was a little sweet little guy.
He was. I loved those. Yeah, they actually were really, really good. We actually, well, he was one of those. He wore it out in the car, so we had to buy another.
Yeah, I mean, my nephew has one. It's like this refrigerator magnet thing. And every time and then you put the magnets into this little thing, and then my voice comes out of it. And my mom, I think, was kind of losing her. My sister was definitely losing her mind with it. But hey, it's Auntie Nikki, so
Evil laugh.
yeah,
Evil laugh.
yeah.
The game you mentioned. Give me the title again, because
Moonglow Bay.
Okay, is it coming out on all platforms? You know?
I think it's on Switch. I can't remember. I feel like I did it such a long time ago, and I know I did see a trailer the other day. I can't remember.
That's okay, because I'll look it up and post
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I mean,
We have and it's probably, let's see, we're on YouTube, probably a thing over there where it is. And if it's not mirroring my thing, oh well.
Oh yeah. Like, over here, over there.
Yeah.
Click on this.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll get it. Well, other than that, is there anything else you would like to tell the viewers today? Wannabe actors who haven't found their angle in life yet.
Wow. I mean, all I can say is being real is like, it's a tough thing to get into, but if you have the love for it, you got to have a lot of love for it. And for me, it's like, there's no other thing that I wanted to do. I mean, well, let's just say I thought, oh, I'll be a veterinarian or I'll be a writer. But once I started doing voice acting, there's nothing else that's gonna sway me at this point. It's just, I want to say, like, this has been really special with Psychonauts 2 coming out, is I've nurtured a lot of really cool friendships through doing conventions all these years. And I mean, I really like to meet people and connect with them, and keep in touch, like whether it's Instagram or Twitter, or some people write to me my personal email. That's totally cool too. And I have really loved, I think it's been such a change since The Walking Dead, where I got a lot of hate mail. So hearing from people that are playing Psychonauts 2 that were so patient. I mean, these were people that I met before Psychonauts 2 was even being discussed, that were asking me, like, is this happening? That's why I know there's such a beautiful fan base for this game. The letters I've been getting, the messages on my Facebook or on Twitter, Instagram, wherever, is just been wonderful. And I think not doing cons this whole time has, it's been nice to not be traveling around so much, and I've been getting to be home and stuff. But I've really realized how fortunate I am that I've met really amazing people out there that are unabashedly, they love games. They love playing games, they love, especially with Psychonauts. And I'm so happy that they finally have this in their lives. And I love hearing about it. I know that was real cheesy. I just needed to say that.
Cheesy.
I've been very grateful.
I think that
even Keith, he sent me a picture of his son was playing it, and like,
yeah,
it just made me so happy. I just like to see him, this little guy,
I
awesome.
I think that, and it comes kind of from because you and I we're about the same age. It's the same generation thing. We kind of grew up, like with me, mine was Atari and Nintendo and stuff, but it sort of built to a thing where, and it was something that I think that was misunderstood, that it is as much a valid storytelling medium as any of the other arts, as the novels and everything else, if you put it in the hands of people who understand the medium. Tim Schafer is one of those guys.
For sure.
And don't get me wrong, the John Carmacks and people like id, yeah, they do things that if you want to be Schwarzenegger running around shooting people, but we reach sort of this point where drama is not simply a film thing, and that the player is actually part of the cast. And that's become such an amazing thing to see happen in the last 20 years or so. Absolutely.
Like that you get to make the choice, like, what do you want them to say? That was what was cool about The Walking Dead. I think that's why people got so absorbed in it, because you were personally involved. You made these decisions, and they would come back to haunt you,
And it's a very difficult world. With a lot of gray in it. There's not a whole lot of gray in a SimCity sort of thing. There's not a whole lot of gray, and you shoot the monster and go home. It's very, very black and white. But something like The Walking Dead puts you in those into shoes that sometimes aren't as comfortable as it is just watching a show. You know?
Yeah.
And
I think Psychonauts too, it's such a time for it because it is a lot about mental health, and we've all been there's not anyone during this time that can say, oh, this has been so easy for me. Like my life has been amazing. It's been a really hard time.
Yeah.
And a lot, I mean, I've been alone. I've been by myself for almost, I mean, not anymore, thank goodness, but for like a year, I was just in here by myself, and it was like, you know, I'm good. I'm okay with being by myself. I entertain myself, but after a while, I'm like, whoa, this is weird. I'm talking to myself a lot more than usual, and
it's and with your job, voice acting, you probably have a home studio, and so like I'm a web manager at a local university. So when it started to hit, they sent us all home, and so in this aspect of these people, well, it's great you can work at home and stuff, but you get to this weird thing where and you know kind of what I'm talking about here, where you can do everything from home, but there are occasionally points where you go, you know, this is the point where I shouldn't be here anymore.
yeah, and I started feeling my motivation to just be like, okay, what series it's 8 a.m. What am I watching on Netflix today? Like, you know, I was just kind of like, I had days where, and then I didn't really want to talk to anybody. And I was just be like, some days I was just mad. Some days I was crying. Some days I would have this weird, oh, I'm going to be happy today. It was like, but I think, anyway, I'm showing how crazy I am, but I think we all went through stuff, and like this game is it's the perfect time for this game. Is all I'm saying, basically. Bottom line, Psychonauts 2.
Psychonauts.
Everybody play it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Everybody, Nicki Rapp with Psychonauts 2 coming up down. Well, when is the release date on that? That's really, really soon.
It's out.
It's out.
It's out. It's been out for a few weeks. It's great.
I lost track of it because that was one I was watching the ads for.
Yeah, no worries. Well, it came up slow, but when it happened fast. So
Psychonauts 2 is out, and Moonglow Bay is coming up, so keep an eye out for that, and we'll drop
and hopefully I'll have more stuff I can talk about later.
Oh, I'm sure you will. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
You're welcome.